Here in Nigeria, we are quite anxious, quite agitated by the slow pace of progress. But what has always been of interest to me in Nigeria is that we always get angry at the same thing and about the same time. And the volume of noise doesn't seem to change between the intellectuals, the political actors, and the ordinary people. It's a sad commentary because these processes ought to be anchored on pretty deep reflection and deep thinking. And I think that is why what we're trying to do here, or what has already been undertaken, is of great importance and great significance. And one of the difficulties with talking about Nigeria is that the assumption is that everybody who's gone into public life is a crook and is going there because they don't have any other thing to do with their lives. And I think that progress can only happen to us if we have the capacity and the ability to identify certain individuals, even if we don't reward them, because in the National Assembly, there must be people, individuals, with enough passion. It doesn't really matter where they come from, but we should be able to identify those kind of people and see how best we can collaborate. And I think that if there is anything we'll take away from this conversation, is the need for greater collaboration. Because many of us are purely spectators. And to the extent, politics is not just about going out to vote. It's not even about belonging to a political party. It's about enough passion and enough concern about the issues around us. The people who are in the National Assembly have not been picked from another planet. They're all part and parcel of us. We have elections, everybody is frustrated, but deep down inside us, Nigerians, the only elections that are fraudulent are the ones that my brother or my friend lost. But the election that my candidate won and my brother won, the person I'm interested in won, no matter how crooked they may be, as far as we are concerned, the elections were free, fair, and credible. It's not my place to, I've gone through the presentation that we are unveiling today. Excellent work. But I think we must begin to pay attention to the fact that the formation of political parties is not an easy thing. It's a bit agonizing to hear politicians, as you often hear in Nigeria. Politicians will tell you, they wrote the manifesto in my bedroom for our political parties. We wrote it in my room. And you have a situation in which 80% or 90% of the population and even members of the party have no idea about what the manifesto looks like. Because for us, politics is just about holding on to power. What we'll do with it, it's a different thing altogether. So I'm hopeful that Nigerians can become sufficiently interested in the constitution, even the claims made by political parties in their manifestos. Because if we are not interested in this, we keep using the famous expression, holding them to account. You cannot hold them to account if you don't know what it is they were committed to. We are in politics in Africa at a very difficult time. And as you can see right across the world, the rise of illiberal democratic movements and so on, where instead of expanding the political space, there is a severe constriction of the political space by all kinds of forces. So we need solutions to our problems. We don't elect politicians to enjoy on our behalf. Because somehow, once elections are over, we gradually come down to being spectators. And this is why you cannot answer the question, why will 95 million Nigerians go and register to vote? And at the end, only about 20 million people go out to vote. So I call on the political class to give us a reason to hope, to give us a reason to create a sense of nobility and belief and hope around politics and political processes. And that people should at least attempt to read what their parties have signed. There are so many people in public life, especially in the state and national assemblies. Many politicians who have no idea why they got to where they got to, and are showing almost no interest in improving the quality of their knowledge and understanding of political processes. I mean, it's a bit agonizing that Nigerians will, newly elected governors will make a trip to Rwanda, just to go and think about what they are going to do. And if you go, if you are familiar with all these political movements, is that people travel from here to America and to everywhere. Sometimes if 50 people travel abroad, 30 or 40 people never attend even the processes. They get the ESTA code, but they don't participate in the processes. But we should not be talking about going to learn democracy from Rwanda. And of course, if we are obsessed with Rwanda, it's wonderful. But please, let's not forget, Rwandan politics is not the same as Nigerian politics. I hear Nigerian women, they keep saying, we want to be like Rwanda. Well, if you want to be like Rwanda with the huge women population in government, then you've got to kill your husbands. Because had the men not been killed during the genocide, women would not have had the opportunity they now have in Rwandan politics. Okay, so it's not an act of some benevolent Democrat who has realized that women have a place. It's an act of desperation. But the point has been made. And I keep saying, and I will end, Nigerian women, I support your initiative. There should be more than 30%. But the only point I disagree with him, this 30% in the mind of many people, it is just 30% of the corruption. We just want to enter this process. We want to get 30 or 40% of the corruption. There is no need wanting a seat at the table if you are not going to be able to effect change. And finally, you will see in this report, a lot of people were consulted. It's quite elaborate. People were asked all kinds of questions. And I'm hopeful that everybody will read this report. Because it's pretty well written, but it also has recommendations. And if we begin to attempt to implement those recommendations, we will begin a process of energizing our democracy. But let us not assume that there are going to be a bunch of wonderful human beings who at some point in time will descend on Nigeria and change the politics of Nigeria completely. That's not how that's not how politics is played out. Our hope is that this generation will do its best and hand over to the next generation. Very often, many of us don't even know that we are progressing. Nigerians think that where they are is the worst place on God's real estate. But truth be told, if you are careful and a student of Nigeria, you will know that we are not where we ought to be yet. But there is hope for a future. So my hope and prayer is that those of you who are politicians, unfortunately, you are not doing enough to raise a generation of followers. I make this point because provision has been made for legislative aids. But very often what we find is that the legislative aides are not appointed. Even if they are appointed, they are nephews and nieces and brothers and sisters. But as you see with politics elsewhere, remember reading the book written by American former Secretary of State for Defense. What was that his name again? During the Iraq War. The one who was Secretary of Defense. Rumsfeld. He wrote a big fat book. And he makes a very interesting point. That as a young graduate, he went to Washington because I think he got a first class. And in the system, if you get a first class, you have an opportunity, you can go to Washington and seek to be an aide to somebody in Congress. And he went to Congress and met, what's his name? Who was the vice president under Bush? Dick Cheney. So he appeared for an interview. And he said he polished his suit very well, went to Washington and was interviewed by Dick Cheney. But they didn't take him. Now, both he and Dick Cheney tell the story differently. Because he said he didn't pass the exam. Dick Cheney said no, they were looking for a lawyer, not a political scientist. But it's a very interesting relationship that developed because somehow way down the line, Dick Cheney noticed in this young man some qualities. And when he became, I think, chief of staff under Nixon or so, he brought him. But it's also very interesting that down the line, Dick Cheney becomes vice president and goes and looks for this gentleman and makes him Secretary of State for Defense. I'm saying so because politicians must look back and say, these are the people that we inspired by our action. Politics, inspiration is not just about paying people's bills. It's not about 20,000 naira, 30,000 naira. No. It is about inspiring a new generation of Nigerians. Because what is missing in our politics is the lack of consistency. The process is ruptured every time there is a new election. But my dear friends, I want to thank you and thank those ESROM and those who have worked on this document. I want to thank all those who funded and have shown interest in the work of the Kukah Center. We have very big ambitions at the center. And don't worry about my size. My ambitions are bigger than what you can see. I am convinced, beyond reasonable doubt, that in less than 10 years, Nigeria will turn the corner. So let's renew our faith and our commitment. Like I said, somewhere people are talking, oh, young people are leaving Nigeria, they are leaving. I said, let them go. They will improve their tools and then come back to a better Nigeria.